Hello, Steve White's 89. Well, I think everyone has heard that Sex and the City is back. It's not news. We've known, well, fans who care and have been paying attention have known for years that they wanted to continue the story. Originally, they were going to do a third film. And the third film reportedly was going to be that Big would die of a heart attack early in the film. And unfortunately, since the film was more about Carrie dealing with his death and sort of losing the fairy tale and dealing with life at that age alone and romance, I guess, and dating again and all that sort of stuff. It was more about her and her dealing with Big's death, and the other characters, like Samantha, didn't have as much to do. So Kim Cattrall wasn't interested in the film, mostly because she didn't have anything to do. It wasn't about her. And whether that was the case or not, or because I'm trying to think in terms of the other films about how much they spent on the other characters and how much they were about Carrie versus how much they dealt with the other characters. I'm not sure. I can't imagine they would go in such a strong direction. Maybe the original script was just more focused on that. But apparently that's why she walked originally, because this was fairly early on. I think it was 2012, so about 2 years after the last film, because the series went from 97 to 2004. They did 6 years, and then they had a bit of a gap. It was only 4 years, and then they did the first film in 2008, and they only waited 2 years to do the second film in 2010. I thought there was a much bigger gap between the series and the film, and then the first and second films. It seemed like a really long time. But yeah, they were in talks fairly early to do the third film. The second film had made a lot of money. It also cost a lot of money, so it wasn't as profitable as the first film, which it didn't make as much money as. But it had a lot of success. It definitely warranted a second film. If they could not spend a couple of $100 million on the wardrobe, they could probably make a profit out of the third film. And I don't think anyone wanted to see the characters go away yet. And life doesn't... one of the good things about Sex and the City was it was always about, sort of life after the fairy tale or around the fairy tale. And the first film was kind of a fairy tale. So I like that they went back and they showed that she had doubts and anxieties and, she considered cheating and so forth. So also the idea of exploring what happens when you don't get the fairy tale, like Big dying, and then having to, go out into the big world again after sort of feeling like you sort of had it all sorted, would be very interested. A lot of people have had the rugs pulled out from under them, and I think it would have been a really good film and a really real film, but probably too real for most people because they prefer the fantasy. So what we're getting now, it's a 10-series episode for HBOMax. It's called either Just Like That or And Just Like That. Just Like That, the story continues, is the preview's sort of little tagline. And they're not going to have... Well, we don't know if they're not going to have Samantha, but they're not going to have Kim Cattrall. So there were two rumours about how this would go back in the day, like a year or so ago. First was that, originally actually they were talking about just rewriting the film, removing Samantha or reducing her to a cameo. So she wouldn't be removed, she wouldn't be killed, but Kim Cattrall could basically do her little bit from the sidelines, not have to interact with any of the other actresses or the toxic work environment she complained about afterwards. And a lot of people just assume that that's just her being jealous that Sarah Jessica was the star and retained the position of the star, despite the fact that the characters really were equal in most people's eyes. Some people say they fought, blah, 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 but that's something that always happens with female actresses, stars. They always get pitted against each other, whether that's real or not. But there definitely was an issue with Sarah Jessica being the star of the series and everyone else being secondary. No one who watched the show really felt like that, but I think Sarah Jessica did, and Kim Cattrall. So I think there was that at least professional tension there. But yes, so the original issue was, would they recast Kim, reduce her role and have her as a cameo, or would they kill her off and have another character come into to this sort of group? I don't see that as really possible, because this is a solid group that had been around since the 80s when they were in their 20s. So the idea of someone else new just coming in seemed a bit off. The idea of them losing that character and perhaps the show or the movie at that time being more about her death and dealing with the death of a friend, which is, in a lot of cases, to some people as, I don't want to say tragic, but I can't think of the right word, but as bad as losing a partner sometimes. So it would have been interesting to see if they'd gone that way, if they'd killed her off. Now, I wish they'd just done a third film, wrote her role down to a very small part, gave her a cameo, paid her a shite load of money to do it. So that way we still got to have the idea that the girls were all together, they were still all friends, they just weren't all on this adventure. That would have been, I think, better. But they didn't want to do that. I guess they procrastinated for years, and that's when the real gap is. There's 10 years now between the last movie and this new series, and I didn't realise it had been 10 years, but I should have known that because I had a fight with a friend at that time that the film came out, at the screening of the film actually, and I got like cancelled the first time on the gay scene by the Gaysian Mafia back then, and and it's the 10th anniversary of that. I just celebrated that in my Kiwi video, so I should have remembered it had been 10 years, but I kind of forgot. But when I was reading about it, I realised 10 years. My God, that's so long. But so there's not a lot of detail. I mean, we already knew they were doing a series for HBOMax, and it was going to be limited, so it is confirmed 10 episodes now. I thought it was going to go 13 for some reason. I don't know where I heard that, but it's been confirmed, I think, 10 episodes. The main 3 actresses are back, but we don't know the story. Is it just going to be that Samantha is off doing something else? Samantha's died. Will they go through the same scenario of Big dies, and then Kerry has to deal with finding romance and love again in her 50s? Although they'd have to fudge the numbers a little bit now, because I'm not sure what the ages of the actresses are now and what the ages of their characters were when the film ended 10 years ago. But it'll be interesting to see how they go. No one actually knows exactly what they're going to do. They only really have 3 options. Kill Samantha, reduce the role. I guess 4. They could recast her. That was the other talk. She was saying, just recast the character. And then they got onto, well, why don't you bring in someone diverse, someone Mexican, someone black, so it's not just a bunch of white ladies. And that in one way would make more sense, because to replace her with just another white lady that, they just happened to know for 20 years wouldn't really work. So it should be someone new coming into this sort of group, but not necessarily someone a lot younger. Other people were suggesting they were going to do a younger character, and they'd have younger characters and involving the older and new characters. And that was also talk of a series, and they did do like a young Carrie Bradshaw series, which I think was awful. I didn't watch it. I've been meaning to at some point, just to see what threads there were to the character that we know that they actually had with the younger character or not. But I mean, at the end of the day, I've still got my Sex and the City movie album, special 4-disc edition, and I've still got the series in my little shoebox set, which unfortunately has a bunch of odd covers in it, because all the nice ones are in a folio, so I can flip through them when I look through all the postcards and posters and covers and that for the movies and that. So I'm glad they're doing it. I did want to see their stories continue. I don't mind Samantha disappearing. She wasn't my favourite. I didn't relate to her because she was essentially just a very proud slut. I don't have any issues with that. I spent time being a slut myself, and I grew out of it, like most people do. She made it her thing. And for a lot of people who it's their thing, I guess they needed someone to represent them. I never felt that attached to her, just mostly entertained by her. So I'm not that upset that she's gone. I was more interested in what would happen to the other characters. But I hope that they keep the character in. I hope they don't kill the character. I hope they keep the character somehow involved. So in our head space, in our sort of head canon, the character is still there. They're still friends. She just wasn't in that their life in that era that 10 episodes takes place. And depending on how that does, I guess it would depend on whether they do a second series. When you look at things like Twin Peaks and Beverly Hills 90210, revivals don't always work. You have to give the audience what they want, because the audience has been watching the show for 10 years and they want more of the same. They want a continuation. They don't want exactly the same, because they would just watch the episodes again. But they want a continuation of the same story. They don't want anything really drastic, really new. 90210 was too much. They tried to show the actors' real lives and creating the show as a fiction, which kind of if you love the characters, it really hurt and didn't really work. So that got cancelled after a year. Twin Peaks, my God, I've got to do some videos about that, but it's so complicated I can't even think about it. But basically, they promoted it as the third season of Twin Peaks. It was not. It was a David Lynch film split into 10 pieces, or 8 pieces, however many pieces it ended up being. And it was an absolute disaster from the point of view of Twin Peaks fans. From David Lynch film fans and David Lynch fans and fans of absurdist cinema and abstract cinema and all that, it was fascinating. But for fans, it sucked. So, general fans, not all. But Sex and the City, I'm very curious to see how they're going to go with it. Because, like I said, they could go many ways. They could introduce a younger character, so then the series is still about sex, but then I think they would have called it Sex and the City and just continued it on like The X-Files. The fact they're calling it And Just Like That, I think it's And Just Like That, my life changed because Big died or Samantha died or something like that. Just like that, because anyone who's dealt with anyone dying, just like that, your whole life has changed. Everything, your whole reality can be different, especially depending on how big that person's role in your life was. So I see this being a series more about dealing with death, mortality, and maybe romance and moving on with your life after that sort of situation than just another season of Sex and the City. So that could be more interesting. It could be disappointing. I don't think ultimately it could be disappointing because we can see the characters and keep seeing them going, and you can always just watch it as a little addition. But yeah, it'll be interesting because they've messed up a lot of revivals. They've only done a couple that worked. So I'm going to stop talking. I've been talking for long enough, but I am excited about this. I knew it was happening for a while, but no one exactly knew. There were so many rumours about different elements, no one was really sure. So no one was really talking about it, even though it was kind of leaking. So that was kind of weird. But finally we've got confirmation. I guess everyone just wanted, just give us some confirmation so we can just finally just, give an opinion or have a point of view or something. So that's what I'm doing. That's what a lot of people are doing. And yeah, I just hope COVID doesn't push it back too far. I actually thought it was going to happen sooner and COVID had just delayed it. So I thought this was already just in the works and had just been delayed. But it's starting to sound like it actually wasn't. And they were still trying to work out what it was going to be when COVID hit. And it wasn't in production and delayed or anything. So we'll see what they come up with. I have to stop talking. Thanks, bye.